Hi there, Mini Mates. Welcome to another episode of Mini Matters. And today we're joined by James, the head honcho over at Seed Studios. I'm going to talk a little bit about his background in the hobby and what he likes to do.
Mini Matters, a miniature painting podcast.
So, James, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And,
Very early Sunday morning.
It is. It does feel nice and early, but nice and fresh. If we could start off by you giving us a little bit of background about yourself and your start in the hobby and where you began, and what you like to do and what you're doing now.
Okay, yeah. From a young sort of child, I was always into sort of art and painting. Rather than getting up to trouble at home, my mum would put me out in the garden during summer with long rolls of blank sort of wallpaper with some 6 different paints, and I'd just be sitting out there painting. Or I got sunburn or something, I don't know. But then my granddad served during the forces during the Second World War, and he got me massively into airfix kits and sort of models of ships and models of obviously aircraft, and I've done those when I was very, very young. Most of the time sticking them together the wrong way around, or painting the wrong colour, or as you do when you start those kind of kits when you're young. And then by the age of 9, I'd actually managed to start building them correctly and and painting them. And then my nan was looking after me one sort of weekend or something when my parents were away or something, I don't know. And I got taken into a charity shop with my nan, and I discovered a bag of Space Marines, and very, very old sort of Space Marines, badly painted and all this kind of stuff. I think there were a few that were not painted, and that's kind of where my entry into sort of more war games, sort of 40k kind of came from.
Nice.
So that's kind of how I started. I've always, as I said, I've always loved painting and stuff, and I just dived straight first in basically, and that's kind of how I got into the hobby, so to speak. I've always been around models and things from my granddad, and kind of how I got into it.
It's a good way to start. Actually, I think I came through Airfix briefly. Remember swapping a micro machine back in the 90s at some point for a small metal figure, which I had absolutely no idea what it was at school, and that was so it's like that kind of accidental discovery of the hobby is just really good fun. It's
Yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and then after that, I obviously found Games Workshop, as a lot of people do, and I started collecting. It was quite funny. My nan again. I blame it all on my grandparents. But my nan bought me, I think for my birthday. I think it was like the second edition box set. The really, really good sort of like front cover. But I think what happened is like she bought me the second ed box, and then I think about 3-4 weeks later, third ed came out or something like that. So I think it was a very short sort of turnaround from second to third. So I got sort of massively invested into it. And I think I saw that second ed front cover, and that's kind of like where it all kicked off properly, really. So yeah.
Yeah, I think like so many of us, get suckered in by those sort of genetically modified superhumans, don't we?
It's something about them that just does tick a lot of boxes and make you just, I've got a massive fanboy over Blood Angels. I'm sure you can really tell from the photos I've sent in. But yeah, so that's kind of where it started, and I've always painted, and red is like my favourite colour as well. So there was no escape really, to be fair. So So then I got massively into the hobby. Good. During sort of school and sort of sixth form and stuff like that, I'd be painting and as I can, around obviously seeing mates. I got, obviously, like everybody, I played a lot of games when I was a kid, which I kind of regret a little bit because I should have spent more time painting. Yeah, but yeah, got obviously. I started doing painting and stuff, and then I had a massive break, like everybody does. Got involved with music, like bands and things, and you know, and then came back to it probably about when I was 23, 24. So I'm 34 in a couple of weeks. So yeah, about 10 years ago, I got kind of back into it.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just carried on painting and realised when I first got back into it, I went to my parents' house, got my stuff down from the loft, and all as you do, you know, and started to try and paint again, and realised that I'd seriously lost a lot of the skill or ability that I had previously. Not that I was very good back then, anyway, but
yeah.
basically continued painting, and then went to, I think it was Golden Demon 2013, I think it was.
Oh yes.
2014, and bumped back into Andy because me and him were in different bands at different time, touring the same sort of music scene but in different bands. So obviously me and Andy knew each other back then, but then I didn't realise that he was into soldiers like I used to. Like I was. So
yeah.
When he won Squad, I think it was his first team. I think when he won his first team, and they called out obviously, goal goes to Andy. I was like, can't be him.
Yeah, not the Andy Wardle that I know. Yeah.
The funniest thing. So it was nice to kind of see that there was like a someone from the sort of music scene and stuff go into the hobby. So there's kind of some parity as well, which was quite nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then that's where I kind of got interested in competition painting, and obviously just sort of I used to game quite a bit, being frank, but I've had quite a few armies and things like. But then because like my whole mindset is like time would be like the most important thing. Like I'd rather invest it in something that's worth my time and also allows me to push myself harder, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where my sort of main sort of passion for comic painting kind of came from, and you know, and yeah, so I started entering competitions. I entered like Single Big first, like with just like a Blood Angel Sanguinary Priest thing, and then and obviously Blood Angels, and then just kept entering, and then I got a dual bronze in 2018, and yeah, which was quite good. So yeah, I was quite happy with that. So yeah, and then the other thing, some of the other images that you've got is like probably my favourite thing I've ever painted, which is just a Honor Guard. Gold at Salute with those in 2018 as well. So I was really happy. Like, you know, 2018 was kind of like
yeah.
So that's a bit of a synopsis of my painting and stuff. Yeah, cool. I love comic painting. It's probably one of my favorite things out of all. I love everything. I'm super passionate about everything about the industry, but yeah, comic painting is probably one of my favorite things.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Seed Studios a bit later. But so you paint as or you run a studio, painting as a job. Do you get much time to do any personal stuff these days?
Well, no, not being but like I probably not over the things with everything that's been happening in recent, not at all. But I've not had any time at all whatsoever, being honest. But I am trying to do like a gaming army. I've got like we're going to a tournament in Gibraltar in September, see, and I'm trying to get sort of my Catherine that. But in all honesty, no, I really haven't had a lot of time to paint that ever. Like the last thing I properly painted was probably my Commissar Yarrick for Iron Skull, like Staff Cat. Yeah. That's the last thing I painted. So that was so yeah, it gives you a bit of an idea as to how time is not my friend at the moment. So yeah.
I think it's strange times anyway right now, isn't it? So yeah, kind of I think everything's slightly different and everything's a little bit unusual. Yeah. So do you, as part of the commission works that you do with Seed Studios, you seem to have, you've got quite a large team these days.
Yeah, it's 32.
And do you do any of the painting yourself, or is it so you kind of manage the company, manage the team?
I begrudgingly took my hand off the tools about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, it's the transition has been. Look, I started sieging in a dingy little flat, and it exploded like a bomb. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like the thing is like I'd been in recruitment for sort of 11 years or so, and enjoyed working in that industry, but there were reasons as to why I decided to leave, and I got mucked around for my mortgage and other bits and bobs, and so I kind of had I was doing Siege as a side hustle, just like as a something around my recruitment job, and it just came to the point where I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna. I know how it is me doing it sort of 4 hours a day around work, and I'm just going to go full time and go from there, and it kind of just grew and grew and grew. So yeah, but I painting for me is like one of the biggest forms of relaxation, I think, especially with when I used it as a relaxation form when I was in recruitment. Very, very sort of very stressful job, recruitment, with it, and I used it as relaxation. So then to turn that into sort of like a full-time role, massive leap of faith and jump. But I don't regret a second doing it. So yeah.
So I suppose it's now when you will finally get the chance to pick up the paintbrushes again. Yeah, I suppose what you'll actually allow it become that kind of stress relief again. Just kind of relaxation, kind of get back at it as that kind of almost. I totally get what you're saying with that, because it's, for me, it's the same. It's my wind down. So when you get to the point where you can actually get some time, it'll be that again for you. Hopefully, that should make quite a big difference.
Very much hope so. Yeah. yeah. Touch wood, I'll be able to get sometimes. Like I've got that Catachan limited edition model that I want to paint, and it's been on my desk since I fortunately got one, and like I mean, it's not even going out.
Yeah.
So
what a great model as well. That's
I want to say, like, it's lovely model. So yeah, but yeah, so that's basically my sort of painting in a nutshell. I like everybody had a break. I'm stupid for a number of years, and then decided to just actually get back into thinking about, and that's a bit about my painting experience and background.
Yeah, thank you. So now I've got a few questions for you. I am going to run through these and answer them as quickly as you can without thinking about them too much, because hopefully none of them are too contentious. So let's kick off with: are you a brush licker?
100% yes. Guilty as charged.
Yes, another brush licker. Excellent. Black or white primer?
Always black.
Always black.
Yeah.
Okay, second person I've asked that question, second person who's answered always black, and the second time I, for some reason, have been surprised.
I mean, like with because obviously, like, Chaos Black as spray can has not changed since I was very, very small. It's a very, very good product, and for me personally, with an airbrush, like, you can put any color over a black base coat, and that base coat for me purely is the best foundation you can have for anything that goes on top. Is in my opinion, and I think black's just the best out of all of them. So I've always used it. It's never done me bad. So I don't, as any granddad would say, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
That's it.
Yeah,
it's certainly a smooth finish. I used to. I remember many years ago trying the old Skull White spray, and every time it was like you were just kind of like dusting the model in flour or something like that, and you get that kind of grainy texture, which is a nightmare. So I can see why black might be good.
Combine it with a hairdryer and hairdryer after you've done a couple of passes, it just goes on super smooth. So yeah, it's I will never ever use anything else. The day that they stop making Chaos Black, I'll be a bit sad.
Yeah. So you mentioned airbrush just a moment ago. Do you use a lot of airbrushing in your painting?
Yeah, I do. I'd probably say, to be honest with you, I'd probably say 85 to 80% with the brush, and then 10 to 15% with the airbrush is probably the ratio if you're going to be very specific. I only really use it for putting on base coats, maybe the occasional sort of lighting effect, or for varnishing. Purely what I use it for. I don't really use it for anything else.
Sure, sure. Yeah, just a way of getting thin layers of opaque paint down nice and quickly.
All I really use it for,
Sure.
in all honesty.
Okay, well, now if I ask you your favourite brush make and size, your make might be I might be able to guess that one, knowing a little bit of a connection there. But you feel free, you can pick them. That's okay. But what's your favourite brush and favourite size?
All cards on the table. I am obviously heavily biased towards Artist Opus because I'm one of the owners. But typically for me, I'd say the size. I do prefer. Like, don't get me wrong. I prefer. I like using sort of 00s, 000s for sort of freehand and stuff like that. But typically, my main workhorse brush is the size 4.
Wow, 4.
I've got one sitting right here actually. Funny enough, but the reality is that for me, the larger belly behind the point allows the moisture of the brush to remain for quite a considerable period of time. And I find if you practice with a larger brush, your dexterity and pressure management and the ability to use the brush is yourself more because you're using such a bigger brush. Like, if you tend to restrict yourself to using smaller brushes, you don't get used to using a larger one, if that makes sense. Whereas if you've got a larger brush with a sharp point, you can still do intricate stuff and you just be more delicate. What actually that does for you is it trains you to be a lot more refined when you're using the smaller brushes. So I way prefer, I use a size 4 typically for pretty much everything other than maybe freehanded stuff.
Yeah.
So I've always used one, and just because the belly behind the point is so big that it allows you to just. A lot of people have problems with like maybe not performing how they're supposed to or things like that. But if you use a larger brush, that doesn't really happen if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I typically play with a big old size board.
Yeah.
Monster brush. So.
Yeah, size 4. I use a size 2 for pretty much everything. And I'm the same. I kind of make sure I get a decent brush, with a decent point. But yeah, size 4. I might have to give that a go because that's that's even bigger. But yeah, I might have to try that at some point.
It's no sort of like bigger is better or anything like that, but in the sense of sort of like I'm using a big brush. It's just I just find that for me one brush that allows me to do everything, blocking in, edge highlighting, all those things. At the end of the day, it's just saving time, which again is that you don't get any more of. So,
yeah, and it's laying colour down quickly as well, isn't it? So you kind of that's what I like about size 2 is I can get a lot of colour down quite quickly and it stays fluid. You're not getting brush strokes because you're not like overworking in large areas with a very small brush. So no, I totally get it. I might have to try a size 4.
Yeah, honestly, just a bigger brush, like it trains your pressure management at the tip a lot more because you got the brush. And you don't have to worry as much as I said about because it's got such a decent sized belly and holds so much moisture. You can for glazing, you can just load it and then just glaze for quite a massive half hour, 40 minutes, just with the same brush because it's got so much moisture in it. So
it doesn't dry.
Yeah, it's really good.
Right, well, I shall give that a go and I'll feed back. Who are your biggest influences?
I like, for example, Rodrigo Acor. I love his painting. I think he's got very, very good sort of style. It's kind of combination of that very, very, very fine detail painting, but at the same time, it's got that sort of Spanish style to it as well, which I really like.
Yeah.
I have to obviously say Andy because he's one of my mates. Andy's mega. Rich as well. Neil Paints or Neil Hollis.
Yes.
Great. Huge fanboy, obviously, of heavy metal. Just purely because obviously that's what I've grown up with for many years. So obviously the heavy metal style is probably something I love massively. But yeah, I think probably those. I mean, Rodrigo's an amazing painter. Anko as well. Anko Browders is great. They're kind of like my top sort of painters, and obviously you can't not mention Rich Gray, I suppose. So
his name does seem to come up a fair bit.
He's mega. So
yeah. I remember seeing some of his freehand right up close at a salute. I was judging one year, and some of those skulls that he paints are just anatomically correct kind of what.
But he's really, 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 really good. So yeah. No, I remember he done this massive night like a couple of years ago. Like it was just absolutely covered in hours. So it's just very good.
So, open or first past the post competitions?
It varies. I like open format quite a lot. Like I think it's quite good because then it allows. I think sometimes if you competitions are a funny thing. Like I genuinely think that I like Monty Sansovino has got a very, very good system in the sense that multiple people can get the different levels. I think it's a good way of doing it because in that way, if you win gold, that's great for you individually as a painter, but you're not the only person to win it. Whereas, like for example, first past the post, sometimes there's other varying factors which determine the winner. It's not specifically just about the entries in the cabinet, if that makes sense. There's obviously bias. There's person might like a certain model and actually not like the model. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of different. It should, in my personal opinion, I think both systems have their strengths, but I think sometimes open format just hips it sometimes. Then that way, it's more about the quality of the painting a little bit more, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it.
Cool. The miniature you're most proud of?
I'm going to have to say, as much as it's probably going to be annoying for Andy and Rich and other people to hear, but it is my squad that I painted. They're sick of seeing it. Like honestly, I learned the most on it, and not even purely from a piece perspective. It's just more a case of my painting as a painter progressed massively on that, because what I did was I tried loads of things that I had never done before, and tried to combine that with the mindset of I can't make a mistake and it has to be the best I've ever done. So I learned as much as it won me something at Salute, which was great. And out of my very, very few accolades, it's probably my favourite purely because of the amount of progression and learning that I had on that thing. My duel, I'm obviously going to say I like that because obviously it won me a demon. But the thing is that it's probably the best painted blood angel in that duel that I've ever done. But I still hold the squad over it purely because I learned the most on it. So I'd rather it be about the lesson than the actual end result. So
because that way you keep growing, don't you? Really, if you think about it that way, then you just keep on growing. So, what's your favourite category at competition?
I like squad. Obviously. But I think it's difficult because there's quite a few that I like. Single fig definitely because the focus is purely on one miniature. Squad because it's multiple characters in a unit and they have to be consistent as well as individually stand out for themselves. I like diorama. I diorama is very, very good as well because it's massively into the background and narrative as well. So it's not just purely about painting is obviously very important. Don't get me wrong; it's one of the most important things. But I love the narrative, and that's why duel is quite an interesting category. Also, purely because it is about the quality of the painting, but at the same time, it is about that narrative and interaction and the way that the piece actually looks as well. So it's very difficult. I know I've long-winded answered your question, but
all of them, for different reasons.
I couldn't just pick one. If you had put a gun to my head, though, I definitely would say squad is my favorite.
Cool.
You put a gun to my head.
Yeah, I think the storytelling aspects that you're talking about is also the narrative side, though. For if you can get that within the squad as well, I think that you almost start building a diorama of 5 separate pieces, but together. And in fact, this squad that you've even the way you've based those and laid them out on the plinth, it's kind of a bit more narrative. You've not just plonked them. You can tell a bit of effort's gone into making them almost look like they're arriving. They're landing in there.
That's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted them to look like the front rank were either leaping or charging or doing whatever, and the rear rank landing behind them.
Yeah.
And it's all purely, I literally, because I played Blood Angels gaming, Raw obviously allowed assault units, striking charge or something like that. But essentially, I just wanted to encompass that in a piece. So yeah, that's basically why I called it what I did and modelled them and put them. So, yeah.
Now, you might have answered this one already in our discussions so far. Fantasy or sci-fi?
Oh, this is difficult. So I've always been a massive fanboy of 40k. I never really got into fantasy when I was younger, being honest with you. I think there's something just about 8-foot tall, genetically engineered superhumans that just captivated me, and I prefer the models. But I do like fantasy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a massive fan of Lord of the Rings, and I do like high elves quite a lot. But I never really got around to painting any of them when I was younger. And for me, because I am limited on time, involved with and do, like, I'd rather focus as much and when I can on the one thing than try and get lost in loads of things. But in a long-winded answer, sci-fi over fantasy.
But you still like fantasy?
I do like fantasy. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Build then paint, or paint and build?
I build them fully. And paint them as one piece. Maybe like the head would be separate, or maybe like if there's a bit of detail that's covering, say, for example, like on my squad, the shield, that was done separately. But I do it all in one piece. And I think there's nothing wrong with doing things in sub assemblies at all whatsoever. But I think for focus and concentration of attention, if you're looking at one piece fully, when you're laying color down or when you're working, there's no margin for error or room for distraction. Whereas if you've got to consciously have in your mind at the back of your head, you've got to have, I've got to do that on their arm that's sitting over there on my desk, and I've got to do that there. You kind of get lost a little bit. So for me, and this is just purely, this is a did not factor, I just purely prefer in one piece. Which is why typically a lot of the models that I do are open posed or like in a dynamic pose. So it allows me to access the model in its entirety, as opposed to having different bits all over the place. It just worked for me.
Actually, there is a certain level of frustration involved with a Marine with a bolt gun across his chest, and then there's a massive load of really nice detail underneath it. You're like, oh.
I've tried it. I get distracted, and I'm not as meticulous as I'd like to be. So I prefer to do it in one concentric piece.
So you just build them to make that easy. And actually, with some of those Blood Angel guys, it open pose ends up making them look really quite dynamic as well, which is quite helpful.
I think posing is something that I'm really keen on. Like, I like to make sure that they anatomically look as best as possible, and I think a great pose can really push a model. Like, I think you've got a little bit, and again, it does take you have to take in the ambience and the actual how the piece is going to look. If it is a character, like, take for example, a great example of that is like Rogal Dawn. If he was running and charging, he wouldn't look stoic, and he wouldn't look like this defender of terror. He would look more into like combat kind of oriented Primarch. The pose is super important.
Do you do much conversion, or is it kind of mainly kit bashing, or do you actually cut them up and repose?
Yeah, I cut up and repose the living hell out of them. I like taking a model that's posed a certain way, and trying to make it look as an anatomically correct in a completely different way. I think when you can convert and do stuff like that, I think if it adds so much more to the model, and it does draw the eye a lot more, because you've taken that time to just rework the model to something different. I like to have stuff that doesn't look like anything else. I like that. That's that sounds very cliche, but I think if you put that, it does reward you.
Yeah. When did you first start painting?
When I was miniatures or
miniatures.
Probably Airfix. My first thing I ever painted was Supermarine Spitfire Mark 1A, and I stupidly glued the undercarriage on, and glued it down instead of putting it in the body. And
Yeah.
my granddad, I'll never forget my granddad giving me a telling off for that. But yeah, no, I painted that. And I painted that probably at the age of about 7, I think it was.
Do you still have it?
Yes.
You do. How brilliant! Brilliant. Well, I think no, that's great. That's, I think, us talking about you. All done. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about in your personal hobby.
There's nothing really more to add. I don't think. Like I try to paint as much as I can, but it's very frustrating. But at the same time, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you for that, and we'll catch you next time talking a bit more about Seed Studios, a little bit more about commission painting as an industry, and then we'll talk a bit about Iron Skull as well. So I shall leave you for now, but catch you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.